I thought the worst moment of my life was the call from the hospital. Your husband, Mark, has been in a serious accident, emergency surgery. That call was a lie. I drove like a maniac, blinded by terror, praying I wasn't too late. I sprinted through the cold, sterile hallways, desperate to find the operating room where my husband was fighting for his life. But before I could reach those terrifying double doors, a nurse pulled me into the shadows. She grabbed my arm, her eyes wide with fear, and whispered 3 words that changed everything. "Hide. It's a trap." A trap? In a hospital? I thought she was crazy. I pushed past her, needing to see Mark. But she was right. I peered through the window of OR3, and when I saw my husband, Mark, lying on the gurney, I froze. He wasn't alone, and they weren't operating. They were performing a ritual, a dark ceremony involving a woman I knew, a lawyer, and a stack of papers. I ran to the operating room expecting a tragedy. I found a betrayal so deep, so calculated, it destroyed my entire reality. This isn't a story about an accident. This is the story of how I caught my husband faking his own death, what they were trying to steal, and the one nurse who risked everything to save me from the trap. Stick around, because you won't believe what was really in that briefcase. Welcome to Voice of Alicia, where stories breathe, emotions speak, and every word paints a world of its own. Close your eyes, relax your mind, and step into a story crafted just for you. My life with Mark wasn't a fairy tale, but it was my story. We met in college, a chaotic whirlwind of late-night study sessions and bad coffee, and somehow we built a quiet life together. 2 kids, a mortgage, and a decade of shared history. Mark was a decent man, reliable, a little too focused on his work, maybe, but who wasn't? That mundane, comfortable reality shattered 2 weeks ago. It was a Tuesday, around 3 p.m., I was sitting at the kitchen table, paying bills, when my phone rang. The screen flashed with the name of St. Jude's Hospital. My stomach dropped like a stone. "Hello?" My voice was barely a whisper. "Is this Mrs. Sarah Markson? We need you to come to the hospital immediately. Your husband, Mark Markson, was involved in a serious motor vehicle accident. He's been taken into emergency surgery." The world went silent. The bills on the table blurred. Serious. Emergency surgery. I remember scrambling for my keys, yelling for my neighbor to watch the kids. The next few minutes were a blur of adrenaline-fueled terror, the kind of primal fear that makes your chest feel like it's been replaced with a concrete block. I drove too fast. I didn't care about the tickets. All I could think of was his face. The slight furrow in his brow when he was concentrating, the way he laughed when I made a terrible joke. Could I live without that? I burst into the sterile, quiet atmosphere of St. Jude's emergency entrance. I found the desk nurse practically hyperventilating. "Mark! Markson! My husband! The accident! Where is he?" The nurse, a woman with tired eyes and a professional calm, checked her computer. "Ma'am, please calm down. He's currently in an operating room on the 3rd floor, OR3. The surgeon will speak to you when he's stabilized. You can wait in the surgical waiting area." I didn't hear the rest. 3rd floor. I took the stairs 2 at a time, my legs pumping, my breath ragged. I couldn't wait. I needed to be closer. I needed to be there. The 3rd floor hallway was agonizingly quiet. I could see the double doors to the operating suite. As I got closer, I saw a nurse pushing a large cart loaded with supplies. She looked stressed, her scrubs rumpled, and she was moving fast. "Excuse me," I called out, jogging up to her. "Mark Markson, OR3. I'm his wife, Sarah. How is he? Can you tell me anything?" The nurse stopped dead. She was maybe in her mid-30s, and her eyes were wide, darting quickly between me and the OR doors. She grabbed my arm, her grip surprisingly strong. She pulled me into a small, shadowed alcove just beyond the main nurses' station, the kind of place where janitorial carts were sometimes stored. "Listen to me," she hissed, her voice low and urgent, like a conspirator in a spy movie. "You have to hide." I stared at her, utterly bewildered. "Hide? What are you talking about? My husband is dying in there." "I know who you are, Mrs. Markson. They said you were coming, but this is not what you think. It's a trap." My mind reeled. A trap? What was she talking about? This was a hospital. Was this some kind of elaborate prank? Was she crazy? "You're making a mistake," I whispered, trying to pull away. "I need to see the doctor." She didn't let go. "No, you're making a mistake if you walk in there right now. Listen, they brought your husband in, yes, but the accident, it wasn't an accident, and he is not alone. You need to see this, but you can't let them see you first. Not yet. Wait here. Give me 1 minute." Before I could even process her words, she was gone, pushing her supply cart through the double doors, leaving me trembling in the shadows, my heart pounding a frantic rhythm against my ribs. I wanted to run. I wanted to call the police, but the panic was replaced by a creeping, cold curiosity. A trap? What did she mean? Who was they? My minute was up. I pressed myself against the wall, listening. Silence. Then I heard the faint whoosh of the OR door opening again. I peeked around the corner. The nurse was holding the door ajar, looking right at me. She crooked her finger in a signal so quick I almost missed it. "Now." I crept out of the alcove, moving with a bizarre combination of fear and stealth. I got to the door, and she held it just wide enough for me to slip inside. The corridor on the other side was bright, clinical. She pointed silently down the hallway. "OR," she mouthed. "There's a window on the door. Look, but don't knock." I stumbled down the antiseptic hallway. I could hear the rhythmic beep, beep, beep of monitors. My whole focus narrowed to the reinforced glass window on the door of OR3. I forced myself to breathe and leaned in, pressing my face close to the cool glass, peering into the drama within. What I saw wasn't a sterile emergency room scenario. Yes, there were doctors. Yes, there was a gurney with Mark on it, hooked up to IVs and machines. He looked pale, bruised, unconscious. But then I saw her. A woman, beautiful, with striking red hair, dressed in high-end yoga wear, standing beside Mark's gurney. She was holding his hand, stroking his forehead with a tender, intimate gesture. But that wasn't what made my blood run cold. She was talking to the surgeon, not with concern, but with a strange, possessive authority. And then a third person stepped into my line of sight, a man in a crisp suit holding a briefcase. He looked like a lawyer or a business executive, not someone who belonged in an operating room. The red-haired woman leaned down to Mark, and I saw her lips move. The surgeon and the lawyer watched. They weren't operating, they were having a conversation. As the woman stood back up, the lawyer opened his briefcase. He pulled out a document, and he handed it to the surgeon. The surgeon nodded. Then the lawyer turned to the red-haired woman, and she smiled, a cold, triumphant smile. It was in that second that everything the nurse said clicked into place. The pieces of the puzzle, Mark's late nights, the unexplained travel, the sudden money concerns slammed together with the force of an avalanche. A trap. This wasn't an operation to save his life. It was a performance, a controlled environment. But for what? Then the red-haired woman turned her head slightly, and I saw her face clearly. She wasn't just a woman. She was Janice, Janice from the accounting department, the one he said he barely talked to. As I watched, Janice leaned in close to Mark again, her face inches from his, and Mark's eyes fluttered. He wasn't completely unconscious. He was waking up. I froze. My breath caught in my throat. I couldn't move. I couldn't speak. I was witnessing my entire marriage, my whole life, being dissected on a cold surgical slab. Mark's eyes opened fully, and he looked at Janice. He gave her a weak but unmistakable smile, and then he looked beyond her, right at the door, and his eyes met mine. In that fraction of a second, the look on his face changed from relief to horror. The color drained from his face, more than the accident could account for. Janice and the others didn't notice yet. The nurse, who had been watching me watch them, pulled me back instantly. She put a hand over my mouth, shielding me with her body. "He saw you, Sarah," she whispered into my ear. "We have to go, now. You need to understand what you just saw." She didn't lead me back to the alcove. She pulled me toward a seldom-used utility stairwell. As we clattered down the metal stairs, she started talking, her voice urgent. "My name is Maria. I was the nurse on duty when he came in. He was barely scratched, a few bruises, a minor concussion, nothing life-threatening. They rushed him to OR 3 anyway." "Who is they?" I finally managed to gasp. "Mark's people, his business partners. Janice isn't an accountant, Sarah. She's his fiancé. They were planning to fake a severe injury, the accident, to enact the terms of a contract, a prenup, or maybe even an insurance scam. The lawyer was there to witness Mark's will being signed, or maybe to witness him being declared temporarily incapacitated, giving Janice control. They needed him in a critical state to do it, and they needed you to see it, so you'd be worried and distracted and therefore compliant." My head was spinning. Mark was going to fake a life-altering injury with his fiancé to steal money or control something? "The trap," Maria continued, "was for you. If you had walked in, panicked and crying, you would have signed whatever document they shoved at you, thinking you were saving his life. They were counting on your blind love and fear." We burst out of the stairwell into a nearly empty ground floor corridor. "He saw you," Maria repeated. "That means the performance is over. He knows he's busted. You need to use this moment. Don't go back home. Don't confront him here. He and his partners will move fast. You need to get your kids, get evidence, and get safe." "Why are you doing this, Maria?" Mark was married before, to my sister. He did the same thing. Not an accident, but a similar setup. My sister lost everything, her sanity, her house, her kids. I've been waiting 10 years for him to show up in my hospital. I wasn't going to let it happen again. Maria pointed toward the front exit. "Go. I'll stall them by saying you were too hysterical and left. Get a lawyer and the police. And Sarah, do not, under any circumstances, go back to that house alone." I looked back at the imposing structure of St. Jude's. The hospital, a place of healing, had become a theater of betrayal. I didn't feel rage yet. I felt a cold, surgical clarity. The man I married, the father of my children, a con artist, a monster. I nodded to Maria, tears finally streaming down my face, not of sorrow, but of absolute, devastating clarity. I ran to my car, but this time the driving wasn't frantic. It was deliberate. The real race wasn't to the operating room. It was to protect my children and uncover the truth. I had seen the look in Mark's eyes, the horror of being caught. Now it was my turn to show him the look of a wife who wouldn't be fooled twice. Thank you for spending your time with Alicia. If this story moved you, let your support be felt. Like, share, and subscribe. Your presence inspires the next tale. Until our voices meet again, stay calm, stay curious, and keep dreaming.